Look, as human beings, everybody gets afraid, right? And so, if you look at the economic data, the data out of Princeton, why are white people killing themselves in record numbers, right? The death by despair. If you have a pie that's shrinking, even if it's shrinking for the right reasons, if you have to worry about your house payments in a time when it's the shrinking pie, you can get afraid. And often people don't deal with their fear. They want to find an external solution that makes it somebody else's responsibility, because ultimately they can, whatever the climate is, they should be able to thrive in it. And so what happens is people exploit those fears, and instead of saying, well, move to another town, do whatever to increase your economic life, don't do anything and blame those people. And I think that's how that everybody feels fear, right? And I think it's important to remember that just because they're in a system where whites are in charge, that the average everyday person is not immune from fear. Because for the average person, the economic reality for the average white person is going backwards. And how they respond to it may be different, how we respond to the fear, but at the core of it is fear. Well, I was a frightened little boy. That's why I joined these things, so I didn't feel frightened. When I was surrounded by 10 skinheads, I didn't feel frightened. And everybody has their own way of dealing with fear. But when we start to get compassionate and we're not saying their ideas are fine, because they're not. But that's a great question. Why? What do they have to be afraid about? Try and understand our neighbor instead of judgment. And in this country, I see two echo chambers of dehumanization, and the middle rapidly evaporating. And if it completely evaporates, these two, it's what holds these two in a reasonable place. They'll spiral out of control. And I think we just need to remember to be compassionate. We come with understanding, judge their ideas, but don't judge the human being. Does that help?
Yeah, it does.
Think about if you were a homeowner, right? And you have a home that's empty next to you, and you start to see perhaps that the building's being vandalized, right? Do you get concerned about your own home at that point?
Yes, of course.
Right? So the psychology behind that is very similar, although how the justification helps us get there, right? I think that what I'm hearing through the grievances from like what we're calling the alt-right, is that there is this call for accountability by young men and women who they feel is not it's not their issue to have to fix. Like, what does a 20-year-old white male have to do with World War II? What does a 20-year-old white male have to do with with the things that have happened, dating around the civil rights era, right? And so a lot of times what I'm hearing when I'm listening is that has nothing to do with it, but I'm being asked to account for it, right? And so they feel like this is my space, and what other people have done is not affecting me. And I think what Tony was talking about is that they misplace that blame on the minorities or on this group or on that group, but it also is how it's being talked about, at the highest levels in this country, where again, these broad sweeping generalizations, these people are all rapists, murderers, and drug dealers, or these people are the ones that we need to be watching for, let's put a ban. And so when it comes from what's supposed to be a legitimate position in our country, I think people who are less informed or who may not have high enough self-awareness around the current events in this country start to buy into that and believe that and run with that. But there's this core group of men and women who are, for whatever reason, feeling threatened by whatever progress we may or may not be making, feeling concerned about their piece of the pie, feeling concerned about what's their right, and again, being asked to account for things that have nothing to do with them directly. So in many ways, Tony's point about understanding, we're not trying to validate the facts of the matter, we're trying to validate this person's grievance so that person can feel heard, listened to, and understood, which then opens up the opportunity to have dialogue. But on your part, that would mean that you would have to have high emotional intelligence, you'd have to have a high tolerance to not want to condemn or to challenge and compete with ideology. But when you're in the space of trying to understand what's happening around you, it prevents you from getting to a place where you start to value judge the worthiness of this person, although you can see where it might be questionable in what they're sharing with you.